Hi, welcome to Voices. I am your host, Keith Major. Today we talk about pastors. Many of us judge pastors by how well they preach and present themselves. But there are a lot of other things that pastors do. They are there for births, deaths, funerals, weddings, counseling, and they do many other things. Sometimes our pastors take on so much that they begin to get a bit weary. We're here to talk about all of these things and more with the Ministerial Director of the Atlantic Caribbean Union, who also doubles as the President of the Atlantic Caribbean Union Mission. Pastor Johnson, Pastor Leonard Johnson is our guest. Pastor Johnson, always a pleasure to talk to you, sir.
Likewise, Keith, it's always a pleasure to talk with you and to share with our viewers and audience who listen from week to week.
Pastor Johnson, how demanding is ministry?
Keith, ministry is rather interesting. In a regular job, you have, 9 to 5, 9 to 5:30. In ministry, it is unpredictable, and many spouses will tell you that. You may plan that you're going to be with your wife at a certain time. You're going to be with your children. But that telephone call comes. Someone died. Someone has taken ill. Someone has an issue. And what does the pastor do? The pastor is expected to respond. And I'm not complaining about this because as pastors, we've been called to ministry. Mm-hmm. That's what ministry is all about. Mm-hmm. But it can be so demanding at times that if we're not careful as pastors, we can find ourselves really neglecting certain necessary factors in order for a pastor to be very effective. Time with God, time with family, and of course, time for personal growth and development. All of these are important.
We're going to come back to some of those individually. Let's talk just a little bit more about many of us as members, we really judge. It's almost entertainment. We go to church on Sabbath, and it either was a good sermon or wasn't a good sermon, and then we chew them up at the dinner table. Mm-hmm. Are we fair in doing that? Is that unfair?
This is not to say that as pastors that we do not deserve some form of criticism, because with all of us, there's room and scope for growth and development. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's effective when you at a dinner table or you chew the pastor, you criticize, you tear apart the sermon. If you feel that there are some areas where the pastor can improve, pull him aside, talk with him, purchase a book, give him some tips. There are some illustrations you pick up in the newspaper. I know Dwight Nelson from PMC, he gets all kinds of things from members. So there are some things that you can do as opposed to just criticizing. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that there are not some things that need to be addressed, but it's how you go about doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you cited some problems or challenges that some pastors may have. Mm-hmm. First of all, what are the expectations of the congregation? What do they expect from their pastor, and how does this fit?
If you had asked me that question some years ago, my answer would have been different, right? But after being in ministry for 32 years, what I've discovered? What members really want from their pastor, generally speaking, they want a pastor who is genuine. They don't expect you to be perfect. They recognize that pastors are human beings, right? But they want you to be spiritual because you are a spiritual man of God, a spiritual woman. They expect that you be spiritual. They expect that you would be someone who would study the word. Because when they come to church, they want to hear from the Lord. They don't want to get other people's opinion. They expect this of us. They also expect that you would visit. They expect that you would be there when there's a crisis, when there's a need. They expect that when they call, not to say that the pastor doesn't have other things to do, but they want to know that they can reach their pastor and that their pastor is there for them. These are some of the expectations that people have of their pastors.
And are we, the audience or the congregation, are we fair in expecting all of these things? Are we fair? Should we understand a little better? Like for example, I know some congregations or some people don't think a pastor should take vacation. What do you mean the pastor's on vacation? You know, why isn't he or his wife here at all the meetings? And why isn't he at AY and at all the services? And there's just a lot of focus on this pastor.
Well, there may be the exception where you have maybe a few persons who would really have unrealistic expectations of a pastor. But generally, from my experience over the years, I've pastored here in the Bahamas, I've pastored on different islands, and I've also pastored in the Cayman Islands. And I'm telling you, Keith, what I've found is that, generally speaking, members want to know that their pastors are spiritual, that they can reach them, and that their pastors are feeding them the Word of God. Now, in terms of unrealistic expectation, you cited, for example, taking vacation. I don't think that the members would be opposed to the pastor taking vacation. In fact, that is necessary. The members themselves take vacation. I would not want a situation where my pastor doesn't take a break because he needs that time to rebuild so that he can even be of better service, of better ministry. His ministry can be enhanced, all right? And so we have situations where our members are understanding. Pastors take study leave. They go off for 2 months during the summer period, and the elders have to run the church, so to speak. I've had this experience, and they have been very, very understanding. I think it's a matter of communication, how we communicate with our members, okay?
So it's right to think then that the pastor is not a superhuman individual.
No.
He is a person like you and I, who has to take care of family, who has to rejuvenate himself. And so he would have some specific challenges like we have, one of which you said is he needs to be, more spiritual. Sometimes he's so busy taking care of other people's problems that he can't take time out for himself. What would you, and I'm looking at this from an expectation point of view to the congregation and to the pastor. I want you to talk to both. What then should the pastor do about his, point number one, spiritual life, making sure that meets what you're saying?
Keith, it is so necessary that a pastor learns, excuse me, how to balance his or her time. And when I talk about balanced time, the pastor has to realize that within the course of a day, if he does not plan that day wisely, he may not get much accomplished. So look at the example of Jesus here in Mark chapter 1 and verse 35. And in the morning, rising up a great while before day, he went out and departed into a solitary place and there prayed. Now, I'm not saying that everybody is a morning person.
Right.
For me, I'm a morning person. I rise early. I like to have my time with God early in the morning before I am disturbed or have to deal with family. I like to have that time with God. I also do a lot of writing. I like that time in the morning because that is quality time, okay? I can meditate, I can write. But you also need to make time for your spouse. You need to make time for your children because you could be out there serving everybody and lose your family. And when you lose your family, you tend to be ineffective because members look at you in a certain way. But pastors are human beings. We have problems and things can happen. But I'm saying that you have to ensure that while you look after the needs of your members and you reach out to them and you're preaching, you're visiting, you're praying with, you're going to the hospital, you're praying for this one, you're conducting funeral service, weddings, and all the other things that come in. You have invitations to speak at this school, all of these functions. We render community services, okay? But I have to ensure that while I do these things that are important, I do not neglect my time with God, which is necessary for my personal growth and development, because I have been called by God. I have to spend time with God, because we could be so much into the work of God, but so far away from the God of the work. I have to spend time with my family so that we can grow and we can really be there for each other, because the success that I've experienced in ministry has been as a result of my wife. She's been very supportive. She's been very understanding, and she's been someone who has worked with me. She saw herself as being called to share in my ministry. That has been a major blessing.
So then the wife, the spouse of the pastor, is key and crucial to his ministry.
Oh, yes.
And he can only benefit if he spends time with her.
Exactly. Because if you neglect your spouse, you're asking for trouble. Now you may have the exception where one wants you to spend all of this time, but I don't know that we have that.
Right.
You know, I think our spouses are understanding. They know that we've been called to ministry, and they are willing to serve along with us. They have shepherdesses meetings where the shepherdesses come together and they go over some of these things. They're able to talk about some of the issues, because let's face it, especially when you have young children, the pastor may not be accompanied or may not have his spouse, the wife, accompanying him when they are young children, for various reasons, obvious reasons. The children may need to get to bed at a certain time. There may be other issues related to how we grow and the children develop. And so the pastor has to bear this in mind. And whereas before, some people may have had the impression, well, the pastor's spouse has to be someone who plays the piano, has to be at every function and service. That may not be possible in those early formative years. And not every pastor's wife going to be able to play some instrument. My wife doesn't play, for instance, but she's been very effective.
Yes. The $1 million question for you, Pastor Johnson. In this age of communication, we should be able to reach our pastors at any time.
Okay.
Is it right, in the light of what you just talked about, one has to carve out one's time?
Yes.
Is it right for a pastor to put on the telephone recording at a certain time in the evening and shut off his cell phone? Is that a practice he should have in order to do that?
Well, you know, with technology today, right? One doesn't have to turn off his telephone, okay? But if you're going to use the answering machine, be responsible and return the call. Do not have an answering machine and fail to return calls. That's not being ethical. With a cell phone, you are able to keep it on, but if when you take the call, it is one that requires immediate attention, you will know. You cannot predict. You see, I do not know that this may be a moment of crisis for you, Brother Keith. I cannot say that. At the same time, I do need some time for myself, right? But if there's an emergency, I have to understand that. My spouse has to understand that. But emergency is, just as I said, an emergency. That doesn't happen every day. That doesn't happen every time. Now, you may have a situation, it may be one of those rare times where you may have one and then another, but then you also have those periods when you don't have those situations. I know one time we'd retired. I don't know what was the occasion, and it was like 12 o'clock, and just as we retired, we got a call. It was a situation involving an accident, and we spent hours with the family. It's not complaining, it's ministry, all right? And so I'm saying that even with technology, a pastor can reach his members through emails, Facebook, for some pastors, right? They have blogs, but I caution, do not allow now the internet to become the means of just reaching your members. The personal contact, the shaking of hand, seeing each other face to face, these things are also helpful in ministry. We don't want to just be a pastor who just hit the send button, you know, and we're communicating in that way. Let's have personal one-on-one contact too.
Do pastors, it would seem that a pastor who takes on all these problems might need counseling sometimes himself. Do they
yes.
need counseling sometimes?
Certainly, Keith. And I don't want to preempt you, but during a recent major event that we had, what we call the Ministerial Retreat, which is done once every 5 years. As a part of the offerings of that retreat, we provided counseling. And you may say, why? It's because of what you just said.
Right.
All.
I'm going to let you answer that question, why. We're going to take a break now, and we'll be right back. My guest is Pastor Johnson, who is here in his capacity as Ministerial Director for the Union, even though he's also the President of the Atlantic Caribbean Union. We'll take a break, and we'll be right back. I'm your host, Keith Major.
Sweet April that calls me from a world of care, and it bids me at my Father's throne make all my wants and my wishes known.
Hi, welcome back. My guest again is Pastor Leonard Johnson, who is the Ministerial Director for the Union as well as the President. And today we are talking, I'm Keith Major, your host. Today we are talking about pastors. And we just finished talking about how pastors are somewhat human, and they go through the things we all go through, especially in addition to dealing with our problems. And Pastor Johnson, when we broke, you were talking about counseling. I had asked you, do pastors need counseling? And you started to talk about a wonderful event that you had in Miami, Florida. I thought you should have carried your voice as host with you so that we could have taped live from the scene, but nevertheless, one of these days we'll get there. But nevertheless, tell us a bit about this ministerial retreat. You can finish off the counseling and tell us about this retreat that you had. Especially, I'm really interested in the schedule, the program.
Okay, sure. You know, as I started to mention before the break, one of the features of the retreat was counseling. We provided counseling for all pastors and spouses. Even Denise and I had our time of counseling. Okay. So we were pleased to have Willie and Elaine Oliver from the General Conference, Family Life Directors. Okay. We also had Derek Morris, who we know from Hope TV, the Sabbath School program, but he is an Associate Ministerial Secretary for the General Conference. Okay. We had James Daniel from the Inter-American Division, Leticia and Abner de los Santos from the Inter-American Division, Elvie McMillan, former president of our conference here in Nassau, or the Bahamas. Then we also had W.R. Wendell, I should say, and Althea McMillan, retired pastor and educator. These persons were great counselors. The report, the feedback we got, pastors, their spouses really enjoyed this time where they were able to go and share. They were able to pray with a counselor. Because, you know, people, unfortunately, when we talk about someone getting counseling, the tendency is to think problems. But look at your car, Major. Why is it that you service your car? Because you really want to get the maximum.
Yes.
You want to get years of service from this car, right?
Exactly.
So you seek to maintain that car.
Right.
So if my marriage is going to be enhanced, if I'm going to get the best out of my marriage, I have to put something into it. And so talking with people who have experience, people who have knowledge and what have you, it is so wonderful. And so I was so happy for that because it gave our pastors, whether they were having problems or not, the opportunity in a non-threatening setting because you couldn't look at me because you were getting counseling, and I couldn't look at that person because
Beautiful.
they were getting counseling. So all over the place we were getting counseling, and people were talking about it. I have my session. So there was no, oh, I wonder if
Yes.
Major having some problem.
I
you know?
got you. Yeah.
Now-
Beautiful.
But coming back to the retreat, our theme, call to serve. I am telling you, Brother Major, the retreat was awesome. We met at Sheraton Airport Resort. Because of advanced planning, the team, we were able to get very good rates. But we had excellent presenters who addressed the needs and the concerns of pastors. We commenced on Friday afternoon with registration around about 2 o'clock, but the program itself commenced on Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, and we ended, I would say, before 9 o'clock on Friday evening. And then on Sabbath was our full day. We started with prayer service at 6 o'clock. Of course, persons decided whether they wanted to attend. But the main program began at 8 o'clock with Sabbath School by Derek Morris. Awesome. You know Derek Morris and his giftedness. He had made plans to have 6 couples who assisted him with the lesson study. But the music was awesome. Lynn Smith led out in that, powerful. And then we went until about 12, 1 o'clock. We had 2 hours for lunch, and then we resumed. And after 6 that evening, we ended, but then we had an hour's break. We came back for what we call an awards night, where we honored our pastors for outstanding ministry service during the past 4 years. A number of our pastors from the Cayman Islands, from the Turks and Caicos Mission, from the North Bahamas, South Bahamas were recognized and awarded. And that was a wonderful evening. We had a sit down where we were we were served. It was not buffet as in the case of the other occasions and meals. This particular occasion, we sat down, we had, I'm telling you, you would have thought you were at a top class banquet. The hotel really did a good job.
Well, yeah.
But I want to commend the shepherdesses
Yeah.
and those of our folk from the union, Sister Johnson, our shepherdess coordinator, and those who worked along with her planning the event, my colleagues in administration, and of course the other folk here from the union all worked together. Outstanding evening.
Now, Pastor Johnson, you know, I've done these seminars before and these retreats.
Yes.
You didn't fill up everybody's day from morning straight till night. You don't have any time to shop, no time to dispose. Did you have the treat part of the retreat?
Okay, let me tell you. We did. All right, in comparison to what we've had before.
Okay.
On Sunday, we continued. We had our program at 8 o'clock, but by 1 o'clock, we dismissed for the day. So from 1 o'clock on Sunday until Monday morning, folk had the time off.
Okay.
But even Saturday night, when we came together, it was a light evening. It was a special evening where you had a romantic dinner with your spouse. Man, I'm telling you, you receive some surprise almost every single day. And then on Monday, we resume at 8 o'clock, and by minutes to 11, 10:30, we were finished. So folk had, if they were not traveling Monday morning, they had a whole lot of time. Some folk came in on Friday morning. We never commenced until 4 o'clock that evening. So folk had time on Friday, folk had time on Monday, and folk had plenty time on Sunday. Saturday, let's look at it now, Keith. Saturday is already the Sabbath, right? So sun set around what? Sunsets now around about 7:35.
Right.
So about a few weeks ago, that would have been about 7:30. So when you look at it, I mean, no one had to prepare any meals. No one had to make up any bed. No one had to look after this one or the next one. It was all there provided for you. You were catered to. So the only full day that we had was the Sabbath.
Okay. Maybe you broke the Sabbath, so.
No.
Too much work on the Sabbath.
No. I told you we had a 2-hour break for
Yes,
lunch.
yes.
And then, of course, we resumed that afternoon. We had a 1-hour break in between our awards night. And then, of course, we had that wonderful evening. I thought it was a good time. I can tell you, I've attended many ministerial functions, and some of a number of the pastors have attended as well. But I can tell you, for those ones, we would go from in the morning till late at night, till 10 o'clock. All right, all day, no break, and we had to walk quite a distance. But in this particular case, you just came downstairs from your room to the meeting area.
Okay.
It was wonderful.
Wonderful. So what were some of the topics or any highlight coming from any of the, you had some awesome presenters here.
Oh, yes.
Pastor Derek Morris, Willie and Elaine, all of these are the ones I know. I see Pastor Brennan was also a presenter.
Oh, yes.
Yes, these are
and Pastor
all.
Brennan was also a counselor. I'd overlooked Pastor Brennan earlier.
Yes.
Right.
These are all outstanding. This program is really very, very well done. What, any outstanding point or advice or from any of these that you can recall?
Some years ago, what we did as ministerial secretaries within the union, meaning the different fields and myself, we got together and sought to assess the needs of pastors. So we looked at the spiritual, we looked at the family, we looked at how we could retool, and looking at the spouses, okay? And so once we had assessed and determined these were the needs, then we so arranged our program to meet these needs. And so Willie and Elaine, family life directors, they were awesome. They had about 4 to 5 sessions. And they looked at intimacy in marriage. They looked at the matter of communication. And let me tell you, Willie and Elaine, they're real. When I say real, they didn't hold back on anything.
So I often say that I don't want to ever do this again. This was hard work. So why would I, after 30 years of training this man, I'm going to give him to someone else? Ladies, think this through carefully. Okay, you've taught him how to do some things, right? How to care for you. Now he's gonna go into some other marriage and do these things? And somebody else is gonna benefit from this? Oh, no. No.
They were very open. They were very communicative. I should have said, they communicated in such a way that we were able to understand. And apart from that, Derek Morris. We had anticipated Henry Wright, but I tell you, we didn't miss anything by getting Derek Morris. When Henry Wright indicated he couldn't come again, we had him booked for nearly a year, but something came up, and he apologized, and I'm not pointing the finger, but I'm just telling you, Derek Morris, he gave a powerful message on Sabbath morning.
Don't think that in the name of Jesus is just some kind of magic cliche. It's not that.
But then his time with the pastors dealt with the matter of biblical preaching.
Okay.
We also had James Daniel, who was one of the devotional speakers. Powerful presenter, powerful speaker. Pastor Barrington Brennan did a powerful presentation. And we had from Logos, the leading Bible software, on a Sabbath, a pastor who was an Adventist, retired, but was picked up by Logos to develop a Seventh-day Adventist package.
Okay.
Why did we want this? Because we want to equip our pastors with the best in technology to be effective. Awesome. Leticia and Abner, they had their sessions with everybody, but they also had breakout sessions with just the spouses. Awesome.
All right.
The spouses were able to address their concerns and their needs. And they were also given special books and tools to equip them in moving forward.
So the resources of the union was not wasted.
No.
And therefore we should expect, or should we? Our
We have a
expectations
right
too
to
high.
expect. We
Yes,
have a right to expect
to
improvement and so on from myself and all pastors. Yes, because of the training, the exposure, the time. And I wish we had some of them here to say what they said to me and to others, how much they have enjoyed themselves, how much they were blessed. But a lot of them talked a lot about the counseling time they had with Willie and Elaine.
Okay.
They were really blessed by that particular time.
In our last few minutes that we have, I want to ask a question about, the pastor. The pastor is the chairman of the board of each church. And as you know, the local church is a very powerful entity in the overall Seventh-day Adventist organization. How should a pastor run the board? Because boards can be rough.
Yes.
And pastors can be dictatorial sometimes. What is the ideal way for these relationships to work? Pastor, chairman of the board, getting things done.
A church is different from an organization that you may have run, okay? Because you have paid staff. In a church, you're dealing with volunteers.
Okay.
So as pastors, we have to be mindful of that, first and foremost. So to be effective as a board chairman, relationship, the ability to communicate, these are very, very important. And then we also have to remember this is a spiritual organization. A lot of battles are won on one's knees. And that is before you come to a board meeting, you want to spend some time planning the agenda, planning what you need to give emphasis to. And even as a part of preparing for that meeting, apart from your preparation, praying, you need sometimes to sit with your elders. Your elders are your key right-hand persons. Once you sell the program to your elders, you're on your way. Now, some people will say you're preempting the board. No, it's a part of leadership.
Yeah.
It shows how much I value these persons, how much I respect them. So much so that I would make the time prior to a board meeting to engage them so they can see. Now, they may not buy into it. They may not like it. They may not see it. And that tells me that maybe I need to take another look at it, or maybe I need to pray some more about it, or maybe I need some more time to discuss it. Okay? And so when you go to the board, as chairman, it is wonderful when you have your elders helping to sell the initiative or the program. I can think of something that happened years ago at the Grantstown Church when we thought about introducing a early morning service. Oh man, there was opposition from the floor. We're not an Anglican church. We're not a Catholic church. Early morning mass. But you know why we did it? We established that there was a need. We have Adventists in the medical profession who would come off service at 8 o'clock on a Sabbath morning, but do not want to wait until 9:15 for Sabbath school. They're tired. So we say, let's cater these persons. So they come in at 8 o'clock, and we discovered they stayed for Sabbath school, and some even stayed for the second service. Folks criticized us, but because I had taken the time to sell it to my elders, a number of my elders bought into it. And let me tell you, they run with that program. Even though I've been gone from Grantstown, I don't know how many years it was, but
they're still there.
Pastors have come and pastors have gone. That program is still going because they bought into it. That's their program. That's not Johnson's program.
Right. And one point I wanted to you to talk about too, in regards to the board. You have the voluntary service.
Right.
But there's also the element of expenditure and income.
Right.
Which causes people to act differently. Sometimes you have pastors who go to a treasurer and don't follow the procedure, and the treasurers are under pressure to write a check and that sort of a thing. What's the ideal relationship for that? Because I know that's a concern to many treasurers.
Remember I said, members expect us as pastors to be spiritual and transparent. There is a church manual. There are policies, rules, and regulations that govern the way how the Seventh-day Adventist Church is organize and operate it, I should say. Okay? And once a pastor walks and follows those guidelines, he would not have any problems,
Okay.
generally speaking. But let's come specifically to what you're saying, right? If the board votes a certain amount for this, there's not a problem with the pastor collecting it.
Right.
But if there's not provision for the pastor to go to the treasurer and asking for this, the pastor want to be very careful.
Yes.
Because it begins to raise questions. And I'm not saying that he may be doing something, but I'm saying that you don't want to have those questions raised. What I've discovered in my particular instance, you have a budget that you establish at the beginning of the year, each department and so on. And then things that require regular expenditure or funding, okay, the treasurer is there to take care of those on a monthly basis, okay? But now things that may involve the pastor, let's say regarding a crusade, present the budget.
Yeah.
Everything is there, and let everything be spelled out. Don't let anything be in the dark. And we don't have to say, well, because I'm the pastor. It's going to raise suspicion
Yes.
and doubt in the minds of members. You don't want that to happen. When that happens, people begin to talk and people begin to lose confidence. But if you have the record, the information there, fine.
Yeah.
And members can see it. I find that members are understanding, you know.
Yes, yes.
But we as pastors cannot assume because I am the chairman, it means that the final word is with me. No,
Oh, okay.
the reason of having that committee is so that we can work together in a setting like that collectively.
Yeah.
And so when you come out of there,
Yeah.
and that board collectively has chosen to do this, they can also speak up.
Yeah. Pastor Johnson, I think I introduced that aspect at the very end because there you understand because of your excitement what this means to churches.
Yes.
But the producer has indicated to me that our time has gone.
Okay.
And we've been talking about the pastors, and Pastor Johnson, you've acquitted yourself well. You're very knowledgeable about your job as ministerial director. You seem to understand pastors, and thank you for what you did for them in this regard. And I'd just like to remind our audience that pastors, even though we look to them for the Word of God, they should spend time with God, and they should be spiritual. Pastors are also human.
Yes, pastors are human.
Pastors also are human.
Right.
Pastor Johnson, 30 seconds to say something to the audiences about pastors.
On the little booklet you have there, there's a quotation by Mother Teresa. She said, God did not call me to be successful. God called me to be faithful. If we as pastors would adopt this, okay, on a daily basis, we're not seeking to be successful. We're seeking to be faithful to the ideals of God. On a daily basis, in all that we do, success will be guaranteed.
So there you have it. Pastor Leonard Johnson, Ministerial Director of Atlantic Caribbean Union and also President of that union, has been my guest. Pastor Johnson, wonderful to have you here, sir. And may God bless you in the rest of your administration as you continue to lead the work in this field.
Thank you.
This has been Voices. Thank you very much. Until next time.